today we're talking about web typography. So even though it's like with a website, we don't have, well, we used to years ago not have very many choices as far as typography goes. But nowadays you have a lot of choices thanks to Google and some things that's called web fonts in a design. So we're going to talk about web typography for this particular one and why does type matter. But typography of all elements of design can have the greatest effect on the success or failure of a piece of communication. Type communicates a different feeling when it comes to what type is being done. Alright, so certain types will kind of communicate certain things, like if you were to design for a medical facility, you wouldn't necessarily want to see a grunge type font being used for it that looks a little dirty. Right, you want something that's a little bit clean, sophisticated, something that communicates the idea of cleanliness. So in this sense here, we look at kind of a site like this where it's like you got these interconnecting typefaces, which tend to add to that feeling of the site. Where here, where we're actually looking at like older typefaces to go back to the 1920s or whatever, that gives us kind of like classic type feel. So there's types of web type that's out there. There are images that you can use as type, or there's web safe type, which is like anything that's like Times New Roman, Arial, Georgia, that is pretty much on everybody's computer out there. But there's also font replacement and embedding, which actually refers to like the Google fonts. The Google fonts that are being used, you can embed code from Google to allow for that font to be used on any different any platform out there. Image type ones are images of type enable a designer to match exactly branding requirements for a client. Like if there's a certain typeface that you have, like a classic one, like a designer created own font for an identity, you may have to either create it as a web font or you can use it as images. However, you want to refrain from using images as much as possible, because what all that does is kind of add to the download of that particular image to be seen. So most fonts can actually be made into web safe fonts. So like something like this per se can add a lot of character to it, and this is not something you would actually do within code. All right, there's a lot of different things that are being used, but it adds to that whimsicalness of that site. Or same thing here, all the different illustrative elements that are being used within that site to kind of make something that looks a little bit more interesting. Web safe type is a choice of font that is consistent on user's computer. These are the ones that we kind of like use, like Georgia or Arial or whatever that's possibly seen on most computers out there. All right, so something that's not needing to be downloaded or connected to anything else outside of just what's on the computer. There's font replacement embedding is emerging as a way to give designers the most typographic flexibility within their designs. And these are pretty much like any kind of fonts you can download from Google or use on Google Fonts. So it's like you do a search for Google Fonts, you'll find all kinds of different fonts that can be used. And even a lot of times you can download these fonts and use them for a particular design without having to pay for them. They're free, they're open source. But each font communicates an idea, a feeling that is being used for most websites out there. So the next time you want to use a font, you want to go to find Google Fonts and be able to use those types of fonts for any of your designs out there. All right, so this is a quick one, and I'll see you in the next video.